I was privileged over the last couple of weeks to see a couple of briefings by Bill Watson. And if you've been able to see those, they're very informational. Of course, as we live in an evolving world, things are changing day by day, especially concerning the coronavirus. It's interesting that it started in a city that has 10 or 12 million people. Nobody seems to know why or how it started. The fact is that there's a level 4 lab for virus generation in the city to start with. So was there a leak? Did somebody want to play a cruel joke? And having watched how things have progressed over the past few weeks, it makes me wonder if somebody didn't get a bunch of drones together, stick them up in the atmosphere and spray, because it's popped up all over the world like overnight. So it didn't just generate itself here and then by people traveling around. It had to come from somewhere else, at least the way I think. And I'm not trying to be conspiratorial. But you would have to think, with modern technology, the way things are, if things can happen, Murphy's Law says they will. It seems that way. And whether it is a cruel joke or it's a beta test for something else, we're told that about 70% of all the population of the earth will be affected by this. You got to think about that a minute. 70% of everybody breathing air today will be affected. That doesn't say killed. That just is affected some way, somehow. So how we deal with it, common sense tells us wash our hands. You read something, we hate these things. Like Joe Walsh, I'm an analog man in a digital world. And here's something I read on our Nextdoor app. The gentleman says, I've heard a lot of people wondering if they should try acquiring masks for COVID-19 and whether there would be any available. And he's not going to weigh in on that subject of masks, about their effectiveness, but he would like to point out that it does no good to build a wall if you leave the gate wide open. I guess there's something to be said for that. Really, it comes down to what we just sang. I trust in Jesus. He's got our back, and we'll make it. Paul said, "While I'm living, I labor," basically, to paraphrase Paul. But in death, death is victory. I faced death once at 52. I'm 70. Life's good. I've been on this earth for 7 generations or 7 decades. So if I die tomorrow, I've had a good life. And that's how I look at it. God has my back. It is interesting to note, however, that China has a virtual monopoly on the manufacture of prescription drugs. Think about that. If any of you here are taking a prescription medication, it was probably made in China. Are they our friends? Do we trust them? Especially in generics like ibuprofen, acetaminophen, and hydrocortisone. I had to write them down because I can't remember how to say them. That's just a few. China's also making deals with India to produce stuff and then send it here. So, again, are they our friends? Are they? It makes you really wonder. And seeing it pop up, the way it is, we know we have to really be in tune with God. And I like the first song, Stand Up for Jesus. Call that the sermon topic, if you will. The next briefing was on Islamic fundamentalism, I guess you could title the briefing, about General Soleimani. And if you recall, we took him out with a strike. And you start looking at his life and what he did when he was alive. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have died, both of his race and other races. And after his death, a missile strike was ordered into Iraq, which we know. Probably several people, or dozens of people perhaps, have been injured with traumatic brain injuries. Nobody killed. The interesting thing I came away with was the Iranians shot down a jetliner that night. You recall that? During the missile strike, 2 missiles struck an Iranian airliner and killed civilians. The news had it on a couple days and it disappeared. They admitted it. Things died. It amazes me how the media portrays things, and the things we end up possibly accepting because of the way the world is. So I don't know, it just strikes me very, very strangely that, people accept things the way that they happen. And then I received an article that I printed out. A good friend of mine, some of you know him, Jay Medina. He's quite, since he's retired, he's quite the historian, and he likes to do a lot of research. He wrote an article on the history of barbarity to the U.S. And I'm just going to read a few excerpts because it is a fairly long and it would be boring to try to get through this whole thing because I have other things I want to talk about. But I want to read a few things about the Muslim people, and we'll get into the Bible in just a minute here, showing us why, I think. According to this article, and he's done his research, so I take it as truth, President Obama, during his presidency, said in June 4th, 2009, that the first nation to recognize our country, and I kind of thought about that a minute, because we won't go into that, was Morocco. So Jay did some digging. I think that might have been the impetus for doing this. But they recognized the United States by capturing 2 American ships and holding the sailors for ransom. In 1625, pilgrims from this country had sent a ship back to England, carrying dried fish and 800 pounds of beaver skins to trade for much needed supplies. See if I can find it. Okay. Governor Bradford, who was the governor here in the States, describes what happens. Bradford related that the fate of one ship was that they were well within the English Channel, almost inside of Plymouth. But unhappily, they were taken by a Turkish man of war off and carried off to Morocco, where the captain and crew were made slaves. Of course, all trade ceased. How could you trade if you were going to be captured? In 1785, Morocco recognized us again by capturing 2 American ships holding the sailors for ransom. Thomas Jefferson, who was then the president, worked to free them. And when he asked the Islamic ambassador what the new country of America had done to offend them, he reports this. The ambassador answered us that the caliphate, was founded on the laws of the prophet. It was written in their Quran that all nations which had not acknowledged the prophet were sinners, whom it was the right and duty of the faithful to plunder and enslave. You think about that. It's been going on for a long time. And that every Muslim who was slain in this warfare was sure to go to paradise. The word Islam means submission to Allah. You think about that a minute, and you think about the tribes that came from, you start to understand why we're at war with them. And a Muslim who has submitted to Allah, or Islam, and a Muslim is one that is submitted to Allah. Islam is a religion of peace. It's just that their definition of peace is much different than ours. To someone raised in Western civilization, peace is achieved when different groups get along. I remember back, I have a t-shirt that says, I miss Reagan. Got to see the Reagan Library last year for Passover. We were out there. He was a man, in my remembrance, he was a man that would sit down with the opposing side and work out a deal and shake hands, and that was it. To someone raised in the Western civilization, peace is achieved when different groups get along. In Islam, peace is when everyone submits to Allah. See, now you start to get to thinking of General Soleimani. If I don't kill them or whatever, they're going to submit. And we could go on and on. I won't take up too much time with that. It's interesting to note that this kind of activity has been going on for thousands of years. They have a long-term look at taking over the whole world. Some people who are Muslims here live good lives. They're the long view, probably. Others, like Soleimani, want to capture everybody and make them to submit. When the towers fell in 2001, I was in a truck, because I used to drive professionally, which didn't have an AM radio, so I missed the whole thing. And our company radio was in and out because I was out of range, in range. And one trip into a plant that I was delivering to, the company radio was talking, and I had heard that the second tower fell. And that was the first news that I had that day. So I didn't really know what was going on. And the boss came on and said, all right, guys, quit talking about this. We got a job to do. Later, because I traveled up and down the highways of California, later I heard a story that in the Central Valley, there's a lot of little bodegas. You call them bodegas, you call them little mini marts, whatever they are, out in the little hinterlands around the cities of the Central Valley. When the towers fell, a lot of the proprietors of those bodegas were out dancing in the streets. It's a sobering thing. And I couldn't help but turn to Genesis 16. Because there is a reason why the people are the way they are. And I suppose you almost feel sorry, but everybody has a choice, I guess. But we know the story here about Sarah not being able to conceive. She tells her handmaid, I'm going to use you to have a child. Tells Abraham, Abraham, do your thing. I'm just obviously paraphrasing real quickly. And she got pregnant. And of course, the animosity between the two women grew. Sarah says, get out of my sight. Go. And in verse 9, after she had fled the presence of Sarah, she went out in the desert. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, return to your mistress, submit yourself under her hand. The angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude. And the angel of the Lord also said to her, behold, you are with child. You shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. Notice this, he will be a wild man. And you think about the race today, the radicalized ones who are angry and rage in what they do in life with their families. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. Now you think about that. Ishmael had 12 sons and a daughter. The daughter married the hunter, Esau. That's a big nation. Israel was 12 sons. Joseph had 2 sons. That became 13. So now you have 13 plus 13. All of those grow up in the same area in the Middle East. And they all still live there. 10 nations of Israel have disappeared into history. One nation left, the size of a postage stamp, surrounded by Arabs. And possibly only Saudi Arabia, who I kind of think is production from Korah, would be moderates in that area of thinking. So when you think about world politics and world history and world communication and global economies and all of that stuff, that all flows in together, built around Abraham's lineage. And it's going to boil up and finish there as well. Chuck was just saying this morning that the Pope is going to have an ecclesial meeting, I'm not saying it right, in May, to declare Sunday the official worship day. Voluntary, of course. How soon will it be mandatory? You start putting the pieces of the puzzle together, stand up for Jesus is going to mean a whole lot to us. Because we're going to have to stand up and be counted. I really believe that in someday. But as troubling as all this may seem, and I don't want to be conspiratorial, I don't want to scare anybody, this is really informational because we know who we are, the family of God. We know what we're facing. You look at the book of Revelation, you look at the book of Daniel, some of the other prophets, we know what's coming, or at least we have an inkling of it. Human beings are not the enemy. Granted, they're what we see with our human eyes and feel with our bodies. They're tools of a master deceiver. And we battle not with flesh and blood, but we battle spirit. Turn over to Ephesians 6, and you know these verses. It's nothing new. But it's springtime and Passover's coming, and you know, we start getting real with ourselves and looking into ourselves about how much faith we have. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, right? How far did we get down into bedrock to hold on? This is the time of the year we start thinking about that. And you know, a month from today will be Passover. I so look forward to it. To me, it's grounding. I put myself in bedrock. You know, you get through the winter time, the cold, and all the things that go on in life, and you get back to the holy day season. I really enjoy the holy days. I really, really do. Let's see, where am I at? Ephesians 6, verse 10. Paul here talking about children obeying parents, employees being good employees for your company. It's put it in words of today. We're not slaves, but sometimes you feel like a slave. Masters are supposed to be good to their employees. And in verse 10, Paul says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord. Stand up for Jesus." Couldn't have picked better hymns this morning. God has a way of working things out. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Trust him. Put on the whole armor of God that we will be able to stand. It's been, how could we say it? I think we've all been very comfortable in this life. I really do. We've been very blessed to live here, to work here, to not be subjected to a lot of the things that go on in other parts of the world. And, you know, the biggest thing you put up with really, and what kills the most people per year is the flu. You know, if you can get by without catching the flu, if you don't have an underlying problem, you're going to probably make it through. I knock on wood, I don't get sick very often. I work outside. My wife feeds me great food. I get plenty of sleep. I try to take care of myself, especially with all the stuff that has gone on in my body, broken bones and whatnot. I try to take care of myself so that I can enjoy my grandkids. I got a great life. The last thing I want to do is mess it up and, catch the flu, and that'd be it. But here we ground ourselves. Here we understand spiritually that we're not fighting against each other. I'm not going to take out my .308 and start shooting Muslims. That'd be ill-advised, wouldn't it? You might think about it. You know, I'm one of the guys that we talk about it at work, and there's a lot of different beliefs at work, and I always say if I was president for a day or if I was police chief for the day in Dallas, I'd round up all the MS-13 gangsters and put them on a bus and send them back across the border, and if they came back, I'd have a shoot-to-kill order. Right? I mean, if you want to deal with it, right? Let's get real. We sit around and put up with it. It's all around us. And we don't ever do anything about it because really, if you did, you'd go to jail. And you'd be right there with them. Because of the society that we live in, we're not allowed to do that. We have to trust in God and stand up for Jesus, knowing that it's going to be taken care of in his time. As much as, my son's got an arsenal at home. We could start a war. I tell you, that kid likes to build guns. And he's good at it. And they shoot straight. And you just, you start thinking about, wow, it'd be a nicer world if we could just get rid of some of the evil. But they're not the enemy. Satan's the enemy. Got to get rid of Satan first. That all in due time. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, verse 12, but against principalities, against powers, and the rulers of darkness of this age. The devil was given authority over the earth. And he's been troubling the earth for about 6,000 years. Back and forth. Hey, God, guess what? I saw so-and-so doing something he shouldn't. Right? Job, give me Job for a while. You read the story of Job and other men that have gone through things. We suffer in this life because sometimes we do it to ourselves. We have not suffered yet because of religious persecution. Not in this country. So it's important to me at this time, and I start looking at this and I start thinking about, okay, where am I at? What can I learn? What do I need to change? Obviously, I need to change something here and get a little thinner. But that's physical. What do I need to change up here in my mind? Put on the whole armor of God that we can withstand what's coming in the evil day. And when you've done all, stand. We may be famous for 5 minutes or 10 minutes when we stand before a tribunal of whatever and tell them about God and why we believe in God and we're willing to die for God. It's coming. Therefore, gird ourselves with all the armor that we have. Here's the book. 10 simple rules. Sabbath and holy days. Common sense eating laws. Be nice to one another. In the right attitudes. Think, do. To me, it's about that simple. Man has made it so much more difficult because of all the things that they can't do, won't do, would be hemmed in by because of the Sabbath or the holy days. They would rather put the tree in there and have the Easter eggs. That's freedom. Following God is jail. We'll get a chance one day to change that opinion. To me, again, that's why it's good to look at this as we approach the Passover. The other place is in 1 Peter 5. I want to look at real quick. And this is sort of on the same vein. Talking to the elders who have a congregation. I can think of times past where it would have been good if the elders read this more often. Anyway, I won't go back into the past. Like I say, we've got it good. We really do. But notice down in verse 6. After all is said and done, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God. And to me, mighty is almost oppressive. You read that I think it should be something a little bit better like glorious hand of God. Powerful hand of God. Something that's going to give me the support I need to go. I think the world has given this word sometimes a harmful mindset. So that you can, and he will exalt you in due time. Cast all your care upon him, for he cares for you. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus. Take him at his word. Be sober, circumspect. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. You can enjoy one another's company, but don't be so jovial that you get carried away with stuff. I put up with that at work with the kids, the porters. They're in their 20s and they're just as happy as clams. Man, they're making their $12 an hour and they got their little piece of junk car and they're just listening to their music and they're just so happy and they're parking cars and I want to do this for life. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, there's so much in here that you could do better. And I try to live it. I got asked yesterday, Dean, because the kids that I sit sort of up front where I can see the service drive. I have to watch when people come in because I'm interacting with people all day. The porters, they only have to get up and park the car. That's all they have to do. Cars all done, tickets written, tags put in the windshield. If you've ever been to a service department, you understand. Keys stuck in the door. Porter goes out, gets in the thing and goes. Parks the car, comes back, sits down, gets back on his iPad, puts his earbuds in his ear, And then when the car's ready, gets up off it and repeat. What do you do, Dean, to get through the day? Because I'm not on my phone. I have been lately, but that's a different story for a different time. I'm sit, I watch, I pay attention to traffic. We have different air entrances and exits coming in, so I have to kind of watch everything that's going on. Because when a car comes up, I go out and greet it, come in, get the advisor, take them out, get the connection made, get my tire scan device, do all the tires, print the 4-color printout, hand it to the advisor, and then I go to the next one and go to the next one. And it keeps me busy most of the day. And when I'm sitting in my chair, I'm resting, and I'm watching, and I'm waiting for the next onslaught because the light turns green and here comes 4 or 5 more cars. I don't have time for frivolity. I have to be circumspect in my job. They're asking me, Dean, how do you manage to get through the day? I just sit and enjoy and watch traffic go by is all I told them. I don't need all the entertainment. I'm an analog man in a digital world. Don't need it. I don't need to be entertained. But the kids of today, the little gamers that are, my grandkids, they're on their phones all day playing games. 28-year-old kid here's, been through college, can't get a job. Nepotism, he's parking cars because his son's the service drive manager. That's all he's ever going to do all his life. And he's on it. Because they have no get up and go. They have no work ethic. My work ethic got born in World War II. There's a difference in the population today. They don't know this. And until they do, they're not going to really grow. Be sober. Be vigilant. And when you're vigilant, a lot of people think we're mean-spirited. Right? Well, why are you so gruff all the time? I'm not gruff. I'm just sober. I'm paying attention. I'm not in la-la land listening to my music with my earbuds. Because your adversary, the devil, walks around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And when you think about the youth of the day on their iPads and, I'm so happy to be working here for the rest of my life, making $12 an hour. That's what I heard yesterday. I couldn't believe my ears. He's already been devoured. Satan's already got him. Satan's got the Muslim, the Islam, because they're trying to make war against God's people. We have to be watchful and careful and circumspect in our attitude and our behavior. Yes, we're going to stand out. Yes, we're going to be noticed. And when they ask, we have to be able to give a defense for why we believe what we believe. Will we get in trouble? At some point, yes. I don't know. At 70 years old, I don't know if I'll see the end. I may be in my grave by then. I don't know. But if I'm not, if I'm 85 and it happens, I'll be a doddering old man, with my cane or whatever. I know Charles. Charles understands. And yet, we have to be ready for it when it comes. Because if we're not, we could be carried away with something that comes along and catches our interest, and we lose out everything we've been serving for the last 40, 50, 60 years, depending on who you are. That's why it's so important to be sober, especially in this time of year, at least for me, and I always put myself first in line, to get on the right track again. So I say this not to anybody's shame, but to uplift us because we know who we are. To remind us that we are God's people and that there are certain things we need to be mindful of. Over in 1 Corinthians 13, and I'm going to use your situational awareness now. Enjoyed last week. That was good. Or 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. It's always good to be aware of the times and circumstances of what is printed here, and yet we can glean from it for our life today. 1 Corinthians 11:22. And I think all of us know that the Corinthian church was kind of a dysfunctional bunch. Corinth was a hub, if you will, of commerce and travel. There were many, many different ethnic groups, different religions, different walks of life. Some were wealthy, some were not. And as they learned about the holy days, and specifically Passover, as we begin to talk about that here, some would have a big meal, some would go hungry, some would get drunk, some wouldn't. The haves were over here, the have-nots might have been over here. And I remember coming into the church and seeing this. I won't go into that. You see the same thing. At least I did back 40-something years ago. So, when Paul writes these words, he's writing to that specific group of people. What I try to take from it is to make sure that I'm putting myself in the right mental attitude to get ready to take the sacrifice on Passover night. Understand where I'm at, what I need to improve, especially thinking. The thinking gets correct, the action takes care of itself. If you're in the right mode, you're not going to say something stupid. And I don't mean to use that word inflammatory-wise. It's just sometimes we blurt something out without really thinking about it, and somebody else's perspective may not be ours. It's not pointing the finger. It's just if we get to a spot where maybe we're a little flustered and blurt out something, it can get us in trouble. So Paul, and that's again for me how I try to approach. Whoever eats this bread, in verse 22, drinks the cup in an unworthy manner, in other words, not having prepared. And for them here in this era, the ones who had drank too much or the ones who had eaten too much and somebody else went hungry, they were selfish people. They should have been selfless and helped. Those kinds of things. And there's a lot of helping done around here, from what I understand, with the things that you guys are doing. That is phenomenal. It drinks in an unworthy manner and would be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. But verse 28, let a man examine himself so that he eats and drinks the cup. For he who eats and drinks in an unworthy manner eats and drinks judgment to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. For this reason, many are weak and sick, and many sleep. Looked up the word sleep. It actually means die. Literal physical death. I like to look at it a little different. Not to argue with this, but for me. I wonder if these people at this time had got, the ones who were, in this situation, had got enough truth. They were happy in their life. They didn't need anything else. And they just and went to sleep spiritually. And then fade away into death. Some have done that in the church. There have been times in church history, in our history, where that has actually happened. People will just walk away because they get upset with something or other. Or there's a division in the congregation, and there's some go this group, some go that group, some go home. Seen it happen. Seen it happen in California. It's all too true. I've also seen your country bumpkins. We're educated city people. We know better than you, because I've been the country bumpkin. Seen that happen too. So I understand why Paul would write this here. But for me, I have to get past being that country bumpkin that may not be as educated as somebody else and understand that I can understand with the Holy Spirit just like they can. And I can be in the right attitude and activity just like they can if they desire. Paul says in verse 31, for if we judge ourselves, if we go through this exercise, we would not be judged. But when we are judged, we are chastened by the Lord, chastened in death. How many times did the Israelites get chastened because they wouldn't follow the Lord and they would go into oppression? Finally, they would cry out, please help. He'd help. 40 years later, they're right back in the same boat. It's a lesson for all of us to stay close to the main mast of the ship. Stay close to the Lord. When we are judged, we're chastened by the Lord that we may not be condemned with the world. How true is that? And over in 2 Corinthians 13:5, again, Paul talking to the same group of people. And I take it from, how this is written that he's even a little bit more peeved with them. Let me get to 2 Corinthians here. I love my study Bible, but there's half a page of Bible and 3/4 of a page of notes at the bottom. It takes forever to turn there. There we go. Notice what he says in verse 5, 2 Corinthians 13. Examine yourselves as to whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. That's an exercise that we end up having to do. And he was telling these people, okay, I've given you guys 2 warnings already. Now I'm going to come and really get on you. And he's telling them, go through the exercise that I've given you already. Test yourself because you're failing the grade. And I look at myself and I go, oh, I hope I'm out in that boat. So I take the time for myself to look at myself, and that's why I wanted to bring out this stuff about Muslims today. We actually may face this demon in our time. How will we react? How will we stand up? Will we be able to face it, trusting in Jesus? Because we have been so comfortable. There's no policeman marching through the door. At some time there may be. And they would close us down. Then what do? Well, maybe you meet in somebody's basement or an anteroom somewhere. If they find you there, they might take you to a tribunal of 3 Muslim, Islam, whatever they call those guys. And you would be, severely punished, maybe put in a re-education camp. Because those things are already in warehouses somewhere waiting to be put up and used. If you listen to the conspiratorial nuts and the amount of guns and ammunition that's available for the government to use, it can be a little threatening. But it's there, and it's for us to know and understand. How far have we dug down and anchored ourselves to the rock? That's really what it comes down to. Will we be able to stand? I want to finish up. I had started thinking about this presentation a while back, and I was going to go through the book of Jude. And I'd given a sermon, probably 2005 or 6 in Fayetteville, and then one is in Fort Smith. Both the same day, and both the same sermon, but they came out totally different. I don't understand that. But I wanted to go through it, and then as I began thinking about it, that sort of went away, and this happened. But I want to read verse 3, and then we'll turn to the end to finish, because our life is a struggle. Notice Jude verse 3. Beloved, while I was very diligent to write to you concerning our common salvation, I find it necessary to write to you, exhorting you to contend earnestly for the faith. Looked up the word contend. It means struggle. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, try to look back 2,000 years ago at life then. The Temple of Diana in Ephesus, that would be a struggle because the prostitutes are in the back. You got Artemis's stuff all here you could buy and put in your house. I'm trying to think what else might there be, compared to today with this. This right here would put a man on the moon. You know how big the computer was that put the man on the moon back in the day? About the size of a football field. And when I was in the service, attached to a squadron that had 2 radomes, a 60-foot and a 90-foot, our UNIVAC 1200 was bigger than this whole building. This is more powerful than that UNIVAC 1200 by far. So I understand why it's a struggle to be a Christian today. And the kids and the grandkids, they come over with all this, and they're on them, and the people that I work with are on them, and all of the things that go on, and all the distractions in life, and all the distracted drivers we have to put up with, and because of this, and all the things that life has now for entertainment. I understand this verse very well. Life is a struggle. Being a Christian is a struggle to stay in that narrow place. Yet at the end, go to verse 20. Beloved, build up yourselves on your most holy faith, praying in the Holy Spirit. Keep yourselves in the love of God, looking for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ unto eternal life. When everything is said and done, this is where we need to focus. No distractions, no iPads, iPods, computers, gamers, fast cars, fast women, or anything else. Right? That's life today. If you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it, and I'm a nuts and bolts kind of guy. Because that's what gets us the victory. Right there. Keeping ourselves in the love of God, looking for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ unto eternal life. On some have compassion. Others save with fear, pulling them out of the fire. We still have work yet to do while we're trying to struggle for what we're looking for. But that's our job, isn't it? That's why we do what we do. That's why the bags get taken. That's why the songs get sung at the old folks' home or whatever. Those are really great things to do. It may pull somebody out of the fire. You never know what seed gets planted. Verse 24, now to him who is able to keep you from stumbling, to present yourself faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy, to God our Savior, who alone is wise, be glory and majesty, dominion and power, both now and forever.